a sip of water.
So this is Mary, and we're back with another episode of A Woman Full of Soul. And I am here with Alex with Pace Coaching. And she's going to explain to you a little bit about what she does. And then we're going to go into our normal Woman Full of Soul questions. So Alex, can you please tell everybody about what you do every day and what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having me, Mary. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. And my business is currently Pace Success Coaching. We're slowly transitioning it, actually. So you can find me mostly online at Alex Pursglove. We're starting to make that transition. But to share more about what I do every day, our whole business is focused on helping women entrepreneurs with making quantum leaps forward in success, revenue, impact, and confidence by becoming unapologetic in who they are and living by faith over fear and practice. So I am a huge believer that so much of what actually stops us or limits us comes down to fear or beliefs about what is or isn't possible for us. And so I truly believe that God gave each and every one of us greatness inside of us, and we have the opportunity to tap into it and to express that greatness when we learn how to step into living by faith, when we stop hiding, and when we stop fearing so much what other people think and self-sacrificing and people-pleasing. And those, from my own background, are sort of my sweet spots in how I help people step out of that fear and really live in faith and confidence and empowerment, and in order to really step into their bigger visions. So day in and day out, that's what I'm focusing on. And that's the vision that we continuously are pursuing in my business and helping women grow in that way.
What are you transitioning into? Because I don't know if I'm aware of whatever the transition is that's happening right now.
Oh, with transitioning into Alex Pursglove? Yeah, we're really just transitioning. So the business Pace Success Coaching was actually a name that my sister came up with 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I co-founded the company actually with my sister initially. And then a few years in, she decided wasn't for her, not something she wanted to keep pursuing. So I took over as the sole owner, but I never changed the name of the business. And we've evolved so much over the last 6-7 years that I reached a point, I actually had a conversation with my husband about it. And we felt, you know what, it's time to upgrade the name. It's time to change the name. We've evolved and changed so much that we wanted the name to reflect that. And so I decided to just go with my own personal name because that encompasses everything that we do.
Perfect. Yeah. So I know you by both. I follow both Pace Coaching and Alex Pursglove. So I'm thankful for that explanation because I just follow both. I'm like, okay, well, she's on both, so I'm just going to follow both.
Sure. I appreciate
that. Way, if people follow both, they know that eventually that other name may, no longer be present, and it will just be under Alex Pursglove. What do you love most about what you do every day? What do you love most about that?
Oh, good question. It's almost difficult to narrow that down to one thing that I love most, but I would say seeing women step into their full expression, like when women take off the mask, when they stop hiding, when they own who they really are, when they're willing to explore their beliefs and their way of showing up and their thought processes and their priorities, when they're willing to allow themselves and just give themselves permission to say, like, who am I really? If you take away what everybody else has told me I am, and you really figure out, like, who am I truly as a person and what's really on my heart, what's really lighting my soul up, what's firing me up. I've seen so much beauty come from that in clients I work with or women I talk to or meet through classes like you and I met, and seeing those moments, having those conversations where women, like I said, really start expressing themselves more fully, to me are the magical moments. It's when, I get chills. And not only have I been guiding women in that work, but that was a deep exploration for myself. And so I think as I continue to grow as a business owner, I'm constantly looking at growing in my full expression. And so I think stepping into a daily practice of practicing that in my business, in my marriage, with my clients, with my daughter, all of it to me is what's so exciting about this work daily, is exploring the power of full expression.
Yeah, one of the things that drew me to your program was literally your title, Faith Above Fear, right? Faith without fear, moving past that fear and moving into faith. So I am trained in theological studies. I have a background in spirituality, and I felt like I didn't fit as a female. I didn't feel like I fit into the mold of what everyone was looking for. They had like a certain mindset or a certain way to view me that they thought that I should be. Whether it was like this religious fanatic person or a mother who stayed at home because I have two children, or I don't know. There was just so many different dimensions that at some point I was like, none of these dimensions work for me. None of them work for me, and they're not who I am. So what does this really look like for me? And what am I going to ground into to be who I'm called to be who God asks me to be who God has really like divinely shows me every day who I am called to be. And when I saw the title of your program, I was like, well, I'm definitely choosing that program over any other program. But, I'm going to listen to what she says, because I have this whole faith training. I cannot throw it out the window with whatever my work is. It's not separate from my work. It's not separate from my everyday life. It's not separate from my family. It's not separate from my own divine calling. Like my faith is very grounded into who I am and how I live out my everyday life. So seeing just the title of your program pop up literally on Facebook, I was like, okay, I got to look into this. I can't ignore this. This is not something I can look past, because I already don't feel like I fit into all these other molds that people have created for me. And I don't feel like I can be my authentic true self. So how do I really express that in a concrete way? And what does that look like for me? And whatever you've offered, and the multiple ways that you've offered it, has really helped me to be able to say yes to that truth for myself and to move more deeply into that. So I'm so grateful and thankful for you. I know you didn't expect this, and that's okay. But
I'm very touched by it. I appreciate you sharing
that's one of my deeper truths. And if you didn't have that lens, I would not have reached out to you, or I would not have, and I don't mean that for this interview. I mean, like, I would not have connected with your material at all. So coaching material that I've connected with specifically has to do with faith and coaching, or a divine element in it, or something that's higher than oneself. So, and it's taken, a whole journey in itself and lens in itself. So thank you so much for that. And for who you truly are, and standing in your own authenticity in that and your own journey, because as I've gone through some of your materials and experienced some of your story and your witness and your testimony, I've been really able to understand it fully and recognize my own self in it. To be able to say, this really speaks to my truth also, not just yours. And to really see you through the lens of other women too. So even to have you on the show to say, I know you have a deeper truth to share with other people that they need to hear right now, no matter what you say tonight, like no matter what is said, literally.
Yeah.
There is a deeper truth in that women need to hear right now in this point in time and in their journey, to help them to be who God is calling them to be in their own walk in life and the lives of others. So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mary. And, you just said so much that was really powerful for me to hear. And it was so interesting. You commented specifically about the title and how that stuck out to you, because I actually remember sharing with one of my own business coaches at one point, I'm running this masterclass and it defies what every marketing person would tell you a title should have. It's not, the typical formula for what you would include in a title. But I sat down one day and got into some really good brainstorming and prayer and visioning and tapping into, what was coming from inside of me. And I thought, this is what I want to teach. This is what I want to talk about, because this is what I struggled with. This is what made such a big difference in my life. And if I felt that way, I'm sure there's other women of faith, right, who feel that way. And so that class did draw a lot of women of faith entrepreneurs into it. And we did get such incredible feedback from all these women saying that they related to the idea of feeling like you have to push yourself down, or who you really are, what you want doesn't matter, in order to be a good woman of faith. And I think that's such a common way we all misinterpret, what it means to be loving, to be compassionate. We think loving or compassion means self-sacrifice. And one of the biggest shifts I made was actually looking at, okay, if I remove all the shoulds, right, and what everyone else says I should be, you use that word and I relate to that, right, of what everyone else tells me I should be. And if I remove that and look at, who am I really? What's the truth of what's going on inside of me? And when I remove my ego, right, which our ego gets filled up when people tell us, oh, you're being such a great person, or, oh, look at you, self-sacrificing or compromising, all these things for other people, you're so selfless, and it feeds our ego. But what I found was that ended up causing a lot of resentment towards other people. It ended up making me feel so disempowered and like I was hiding. And when you're hiding, and when you're in resentment, or when you're in frustration, when you feel unseen, you can't actually be in greatest service to other people, because you're pouring from an empty cup.
Yeah. And there's another layer to this. So you're talking about what you should have been. And part of my own experience, it was that, but it was also what the mold has presented to me and said I have to be. That is not who I am. No matter how many times you try to tell me that's who I am, that is not me. And if you can't understand that, I will walk away from it, and I will not be this. There's like who you should be, but then there's also like the demands that are placed on you. And I'm saying that like I'm really coming from a different perspective, and I'll be really transparent here, because I do things with World Meeting of Families and World Youth Day. There is this lens of, there is religious life, and then there's you go get married, right? Okay, well, I'm called to be a religious woman, and I'm called to be filled with faith, and I'm also called to have a family, and I'm called to live that out in a dynamic relationship with the church, or in a dynamic relationship with my faith. I'll say that, right? So what does that really look like in the world for me?
Yeah.
It's not going to be this one little mold that you put in front of my face and say, this is the path I have to walk down. That's not it. That's not who God is. God is far bigger than anything we can possibly imagine in that one little mold, right? God's self is not one little mold. Look at all the animals on the planet. Look at all the, the realms of women that exist on the face of the planet, or all the men, or all of the people that exist. God is so infinite. There are infinite possibilities, just like in the coaching that you do. And I know that you do this, you have multiple women that come to you with different visions of their business. They're not identical. They're not the same. God didn't create them the same. They're all different.
Right.
You can't say there's one mold. You can't I mean, you can, but that doesn't make it correct. And that doesn't make God's vision. I mean, you can say it. You know what I mean? So there's like this, you should be this, you should be that. And then there's also what people tell you, you have to be. And it's like that this doesn't even exist in my world. So what are you talking about? I have to be this. Like, this isn't even, I can't even understand what you're saying to me, because this isn't at all a part of anything God has possibly imagined for my life or my own vision, or what I understand God's vision for me to be. Right. Can you speak to everyone about what it looks like for you as a female entrepreneur and as a woman to guide other women in figuring out what God is actually calling them to, or their niche?
Mhm. Yeah. So this ties into what you just shared, because I think so often we do operate in, we put God in a box, or we put the way
Yeah.
it's meant to be in a box, the way we're meant to be. And even with business, there's times we often try to put it in a box or make it really black and white, or have a one size fits all formula. And I don't believe it operates like that, not from my experience. And so I love to help women, one, really tap into what's coming from inside of them, what really excites them, and also what they're afraid of. So I find that our fear is often illuminating the path for us. Doing online masterclasses was a huge point of fear for me in the beginning. I was putting myself out there more publicly, more visibly, opening myself up to critiques. And yet that unlocked this door to launching a group program and a Facebook group and an audience and all these connections that ended up being so powerful. And I now am so grateful for, but it was going through the discomfort and the fear to get there. And I think sometimes, at least what I see with some of my clients or women I meet, there's a concern of, well, if there's fear or if there's discomfort, it must not be what God has for me. And I always challenge them that it's actually the opposite. I find God often takes you into the unknown. He takes you into the discomfort, because it's in the discomfort that we grow and that we sharpen our faith. There's nothing like deepening your faith than stepping into a situation where you're relying fully on faith, that it's going to work out and that you're going to figure things out. So to that end too, I also really encourage women as they're exploring, what fires you up, what lights you up, what would you love to achieve? I'll often ask them, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? If you knew it would be successful, what would you do? And so often I'll get an answer from women that is so obvious to them. It's like, oh, if I couldn't fail, well, I would do this, or I would grow my business this way, or this would be my next step. And in that moment, that's illuminating, okay, so it's actually not that you don't know what you want or that you don't see any path or opportunity. It's your fear that it's not going to work out, or it's your fear of making mistakes. And I think that's another, not for everybody, but a lot of women have experienced that maybe conditioning that we shouldn't make mistakes, right? And that we should be perfect, that we shouldn't take risks. And yet it's actually our mistakes that move us forward. So in how I provide guidance with women, I'm often looking at, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And then of course, looking at, so how do you show up doing your best, right? In that, and giving it, good effort, putting, your best behind it, but then also being willing to embrace the mistakes and say, I'm not going to do this perfectly. I'm going to, have setbacks. I'm not going to hit every single result that I want to have. So am I willing to embrace that I can't screw it up and I can't get it wrong if I'm pursuing what God has for me? If I'm doing my best to tap into, the Spirit flowing through me and how the Spirit's guiding me, and I'm pursuing my vision and I'm giving it my all, I don't believe that God's disappointed in us if it doesn't work out exactly how we thought, because that is the path to growth. I have an 8-month-old daughter at home, and she's right now trying to crawl and pull herself up and trying to walk. And when she falls, I don't look at her and say like, oh, Stella, I'm so disappointed in you.
Right.
You gave it your best, but it didn't turn out exactly how you wanted it to. And I expect more from you. That's not how I view her. I'm like, oh, honey, you tried your best. Okay, you've got to learn. She keeps getting her leg in the way, of trying to crawl. And anyway, and so, you've got to move your knee, and I'm cheering her on and encouraging her, but it's through her effort and through trying that she's going to learn how to do it. And as a baby, she's unashamed. She's unashamed when she makes mistakes, right? She was born unashamed. She's not ashamed of her body. She's not ashamed of her efforts, what she's trying to do. She might get frustrated sometimes, but she's not ashamed. And she's going to learn shame from me and my husband, because we're imperfect humans, and she's going to learn shame from media and society, but that's not from God. That's not how she was born. So I really look at what's in your heart and what answers do you have in you when we remove the shame or the fear of mistakes or the fear of failure. And I find that's where we discover the real gold in the women I work with.
Yeah. And we're going to sit with that for a minute, because that's such a deep truth. Like there's so much that you just said. There's so much deep truth there. There's a level where in your own children, like just recounting your own story, God isn't there pointing the finger at you and laughing at you at all. God is there as your teacher and your supporter. God already knows how to take those steps, but God is there guiding you, right? Or universes are guiding you and trying to point out the way and encouraging you along the way. It's not just pointing out the way and saying, okay, go down this way, but really encouraging you and supporting you along that whole path. And no matter what it looks like, no matter how much you epically mess it up or fail, and in your own mind, you may not be messing it up. There's that whole truth of God is the ultimate parent. Right. And the loving parent, not just the ultimate parent that just does whatever, the loving parent there to support you and guide you along your journey here, and God, universe, whatever you want to label divine as, there for you 100% of the way, encouraging you 100% of the way in the best direction you can go in that's best for you and others, right? Or your family and whatever else.
Right.
That really illuminates God's divine's grace, goodness, universe's grace, goodness, all-encompassing love, right? There's a whole, I know, because I had my boys, just like you have your daughter, and I remember them falling and having to pick themselves back up and encouraging them, keep trying, keep going, you're doing great. You don't point out their fall. You're not like, oh, I can't believe you fell again. Like that's not even something you would even think of saying to your child.
Right. I wanted you to walk and you didn't. I'm disappointed.
I wouldn't. I would never say that. Maybe, I don't know. But in my own case, that's, I would always encourage them and say, yay, you tried. You took a step. Now let's try the next step. Let's go again. Let's do this again. Let's see what this really looks like. So you can actually get there and you are actually on your way. And I even in my own case right now, I have a child. I have two children. Okay. But they're going through the same journey. So I'm like, I have a child. I have two boys going through the same journey. They're the same age. They've had me drive them places, right? They have to train for driver's ed now and learn how to drive their own cars. And they're both like, I don't want to go out on the highway. Guess what? You're going to have to learn how to go on the highway. Like, I've driven you a million places and you have this rite of passage. You are going to learn how to drive on the highway. You are applying to colleges. You are putting in your applications. You are doing this for you.
Yeah.
This is God's calling for you. It's not for mommy to drive you everywhere for the rest of your life, right? Like, it's not. You are learning this for you. And I would love to help them for the rest of their lives. They know that I'm included in the picture 100% of the way. That's not the point,
Right. No, I understand.
You are doing this. I am so celebrating with you when you get to this point. We're all celebrating for you. And it is beautiful in its own right. And you deserve this for you. And again, as I'm saying this for your own self and your own journey and your family, that also applies to all the women out there creating their path forward and knowing where the spirit is calling them to be, or where universe is speaking to them and saying, okay, this is what this really looks like, or, really taking that next step. And even if you feel like you're taking a step back, being encouraged and taking that other step forward to be who you are authentically called to be, no matter what that looks like.
Yes. And I think, Mary, for me, a huge exploration for me, and then now, as I pass on this work with others, was starting with looking actually at what I am not. So in order to know what I really am, it was me getting clear on what I'm not. And that speaks to what you were saying before about there's the what people have told you should be, and that what people told you you're meant to be, or how it is, and looking at what's the real truth. What is the real truth of who I actually am? And I think a big part of that too is willing to look at the light and the good, the positive sides, and then also the dark side, or some people call it the shadow side, right? Or the negative side, or the sinful side, whatever, you relate to. But we all have both in us, right? We all have the good things, and then we also have our darkness. And something I really looked at was being willing to embrace the darkness as the path to who I really am and my purpose and my vision. And I often find that when we go into really rejecting it or resisting it or saying like, no, that's not who I should be. Like I shouldn't have jealousy inside me, or I shouldn't have comparison, or I shouldn't have resentment going on, or I should just want to sacrifice for everybody, or I should not care about, me getting this or that. Okay, whatever it is that shows up for you. Or I shouldn't judge other women or whatever, might come up, and embracing a willingness to look at the truth and see the truth of, oh yeah, I have that in me. I do have jealousy sometimes. I do have comparison sometimes. Sometimes I do have this side that gets resentful. Yeah, there was a time early on with my daughter where I was resentful that I was losing so much sleep. It would come up for me. It did. Early on, it came up for me. You
were like,
true.
Why?
You're like, why aren't you sleeping more? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there was truth in that. And it's when we resist it, like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, or, oh, that's so awful of me, that I've had that thought about my daughter. I love my baby girl. Like, I can't believe I just had that thought, like that I'm mad at her for not sleeping. And it's when we get mad at ourselves and reject that part of ourselves that I find, and try to fit into that like should or how we are meant to be, that we end up fighting with ourselves and staying stuck instead of owning the truth of, that's who I am right now. Doesn't mean I might not want to evolve it, or I might not want to let go of jealousy or resentment, but it's going into it, going into the pain, going into the truth of it, and discovering who I'm not, which is I'm not this perfect person that never has resentment, or I'm not, a mom who doesn't value getting sleep at night. That's not who I am. That also helps you uncover who you are.
Yeah, it's a really human experience, that's for sure. And so you're speaking to this point of it's a human experience, but then also this layer of it's not just who I am not, because I mean, you've spoken to it at a deeper level, but for me, it's a little bit different. So for me, I've been able to call out for sure, I am not that, and I will not be that. And even if I've seen it in myself, I remove it from myself. Or if I've made that mistake, right? Like, because we make mistakes, we're human. We're human beings. We all make mistakes. We all have moments where we need to be forgiven. We all have moments where we need to show mercy. We all have like these major moments of humanity, right?
Yeah.
And we've all done things that we regret at some point, and we say, I'm sorry for that, right? Or we say, like, there's something that comes through in truth for us where we say, I'm sorry, and I'm not going to do that again, or I'm not going to be that type of person, or I'm not going to, I know there are specific concrete cases in my own life where I had to really look at who do I want to be and who am I called to be versus who I'm being right now and what I've done in the past or what I just did last week. Do I want to do that again or not? What does that look like? And when do I change this path, and what does this really look like for me? And is that I've had I would say at least 3 defining moments where I've been like, this path is leading me down this way in direction, and that's not who I want to be. So I'm not going down that path. Or I've been like, I just made a major mistake. I'm not remaking this mistake tomorrow. Or God calls me to a greater truth, and it's not that path.
Yes. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Mary. And I think for me, it's almost just a really slight, like subtle, nuance shifted way of looking at it. And it's very similar because I do believe in growing into being the person you want to be, right? And accepting like, oh, I don't like this part of me, or I don't enjoy this part. I don't want to have this part of my life. Or so I want to change it.
I don't like what this is having me become, or the path I may end up going down if I become this, or this is how I'm feeling. And this is not the way I want to evolve or become. Right. Yeah. So like if this feeling of jealousy constantly creeps up every single day, say you're like going through social media as a female entrepreneur, you're going through, this is not the case for me. It was something major bigger than this. But if you're going through like social media and you're looking at everybody and you're comparing yourself and you feel like garbage every single day, and you go through this for 7 days a week, and then you get to the second week of this, and eventually you realize it and you call it out and you're like, oh, I don't like who I'm becoming right now. We got to backtrack this. We got to move on. We got to change this, you know?
Yeah. So I would say how I approach something like that, the slight shift is, you know, okay, going on the social media, which I used to do years ago, and I would surf and feel bad and go into comparison or jealousy and like, why can't I have that? Or am I as good as they are? Or whatever thoughts would come up. The shift I made was, instead of saying like, oh, I don't like who I'm becoming and putting myself down for behaving that way, I just shift slightly into looking at, oh, I'm in jealousy. So this is actually showing me something. There's a gift for me here. There's an opportunity. So it's embracing the opportunity. And I found that through doing that, it actually helped me shift it with a lot more ease, versus when I was fighting it, I would often then end up staying stuck in it. Like, I don't want to feel jealous. I don't want to be that person. But then the next day it kept persisting. So I found what you resist persists. And it was more embracing it and loving that part of myself of saying, oh, wow, you're in jealousy right now. You don't want to be in jealousy. And, you know, you're in fear, right? You want to be good enough. This is actually showing you something that, or you want to be enough. You want to put yourself out there. You want to, you know, create the success these people have. You want to pursue your vision. So what's the gift in this? And then I would pursue the gift and the opportunity. So like I said, a super subtle shift, I think, from what you're saying. And that's my approach. And how I shifted it.
Yeah. And so I will say older mindsets will go to, this was my fault. Like, they'll see it as a fault. And then they can label, like they will or can label it as a fault and say, this is not a fault I want to have anymore. Right. And I choose the other. I choose the opposite of that. You still label that fault and you still accept that's a fault in yourself, but you choose a different direction, a positive direction, and you choose a different way, or a positive, you know, a positive path. I know even from having my own kids, like like you said, when the boy, so I had two at the same time. And they tried to sleep through the night. They really did. God bless them. They really did. And my doctor had already told me they're going to wake up through the night. They were premature babies. They're going to wake up. They need whatever. As a mother, I can only give so much, literally, to two children at the same time. So just like you, I was like, dear God, when are they going to sleep? Like, can you just have them sleep for 3 hours? Right. Like, and it was just about one. It wasn't even about both. It was like, just have one sleep for 3 hours so that one doesn't wake up the other one. Okay. That's all I'm asking. That's all but in my own self, there was a point where I had to be like, okay, I don't like who I'm becoming in this. I'm getting really upset. I'm getting really frustrated, and God wants me to enjoy this experience. And I'm thankful and grateful for my children, So I chose the other. I was like, okay, I'm thankful and I'm grateful. I'm thankful and I'm grateful, and I'm here for this. And if it looks like this, we're going to work through this, and we're going to get through this, and we're moving to the next point. And God is through it all.
Yeah. You're speaking to something so important, Mary, because you're talking about the power of conscious choice.
Yeah.
And I think one of the greatest gifts we've been given is the power to choose, right? Free will, the ability to decide our path. And what I heard you saying, and this is something I just fully agree with and continuously work on in my life, is looking at where I can choose gratitude, because there is always something to be grateful for.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of A Woman Full of Soul. And again, that was Alex Pursglove and Pace Coaching, alexpursglove.com, on everything with an understanding and gratefulness, and really moving into your full potential. And we're going to have Alex on in a couple more episodes after this, as we continue to expand on this theory of peace. What does peace look like? On top of moving into flow and balance and being truly, fully yourself in the world today as a female entrepreneur that also has a personal life. Thank you for joining us, and we will be back soon with our next episode. Ciao and arrivederci.